A man can buy land. A man can buy cattle. A man can even buy the respect of a whole town if his pockets are deep enough. But there is one thing no amount of money can promise: a child who will carry his name when he is gone. Clyde Bonner understood this truth better than most men in Montana. He was rich, disciplined, and powerful, yet every night his great house stayed quiet. No laughter, no small footsteps, just the sound of wind brushing the plains. Clyde Bonner did not believe in romance. To him, women were trouble wrapped in lace and soft words. He had learned that lesson young and paid dearly for it. Love, in his mind, created weakness. But a child was different. A child was legacy. A child was certainty. That was why he placed the advertisement, not for a wife, but for a solution. When Lydia Voss stepped off the train at Silver Creek, she did not carry dreams of love. She carried exhaustion. At 32, rejection had become a familiar companion. 5 times she had answered marriage advertisements. 5 times she had returned home alone. Each rejection carved something out of her until only one desire remained. She wanted to be a mother. The advertisement had been blunt. No romance required. Wealth and security guaranteed. Must be willing to live on a ranch. To Lydia, those words felt honest, even merciful. She was tired of pretending. Tired of soft smiles and careful words meant to hide her intelligence and strength. This man did not want illusion. He wanted truth. Clyde saw her the moment she stepped onto the platform. He did not see a woman to court. He saw a woman who had endured disappointment and survived it. Her posture was straight, her eyes steady. She looked like someone who understood responsibility. That was enough. Their first conversation was brief, polite, cold. Clyde spoke like a man discussing property lines. Lydia listened like a woman weighing her last chance. He told her what he expected. She told him she understood. Neither spoke of feelings. Neither pretended this was anything but an arrangement. The Bonner Ranch stood vast and powerful against the Montana sky. White wood, clean lines, order everywhere. It reflected Clyde perfectly. Inside, the house was silent, polished, controlled. Lydia's room was beautiful, larger than her entire home back in Iowa. The dresses waiting for her spoke of wealth, not affection. Still, she accepted them. This was the price of security. Dinner that first night was formal. Clyde spoke of cattle numbers and land growth. Lydia answered when spoken to. Everything was measured. Careful, controlled. Then he told her the rules. She would bear his child. She would follow the doctor's instructions. She would not interfere in ranch business. She would receive an allowance. There would be discretion. No emotional expectations. Lydia agreed, not because she was weak, but because she knew what she wanted. A child, a purpose, a place to belong. Days passed in quiet routine. Lydia explored the house, the library, the gardens. She watched the ranch from windows, seeing men work cattle with skill and pride. Clyde remained distant, but respectful. When he came to her room at night, his touch was careful, almost restrained. There was no tenderness, but there was patience. Lydia told herself this was enough. Then one night, something shifted. Lydia could not sleep. The house felt too quiet. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and walked softly into the hallway. Downstairs, a faint light glowed from Clyde's study. She hesitated, then stepped closer. Clyde stood by the window, whiskey in hand, the moonlight cutting sharp lines across his face. Without his usual armor of control, he looked tired, human. He turned when he sensed her presence. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them felt heavy, charged with something neither had planned. They talked, not about cattle or rules, about the past, about the woman Clyde had once married and lost, about loneliness, about disappointment. His voice dropped, losing its sharp edge. Lydia listened, not as a solution, but as a woman who understood quiet pain. For the first time, Clyde looked at her differently, not like an arrangement, like a woman standing before him. The air changed. The distance between them shrank. His restraint cracked. The hunger in his eyes was sudden and unguarded. His voice lowered, rough and dangerous as he stepped closer. "I want some sugar," he whispered, close enough that she felt his breath. "So I'm having you tonight." Lydia should have stepped back. She should have remembered the rules. Instead, her heart raced. This was not duty. This was want. She did not answer with words. She stayed. And in that moment, Lydia knew this arrangement had just become something far more dangerous than either of them expected. Morning came softly to Silver Creek Ranch, but nothing inside the house felt the same. Lydia woke with the strange certainty that a line had been crossed, one that could never be redrawn. The memory of Clyde's voice, low and demanding, still echoed in her chest. It had not felt like an arrangement. It had felt like hunger meeting hunger. At breakfast, the change was impossible to ignore. Clyde stood when she entered the room, not out of habit, but intention. His gray eyes lingered on her face longer than before, as if confirming she was real and not something imagined in the dark. Pearl noticed it too. Her sharp gaze flicked between them, reading the air with quiet precision. "Good morning, Lydia," Clyde said. He had never used her name like that before. Not softly, not like it mattered. "Good morning," she replied, her voice steady even as her pulse betrayed her. They ate in near silence, but it was no longer empty. It was full of unspoken awareness. When their hands brushed reaching for the coffee pot, neither pulled away. Clyde's touch lingered just long enough to make her breath catch. After breakfast, he surprised her. "Ride with me," he said. "I want to show you something." Lydia hesitated. This was new, she nodded. The sky was clear, pale winter light, stretching across endless land. Clyde helped her onto a gentle mare, his hands firm and careful at her waist. He did not rush away once she was seated. For a brief moment, his hands stayed there, grounding her. They rode side by side across the ranch. Clyde spoke as they went, not with the sharp efficiency she knew, but with pride. He showed her the northern pasture, the creek that never froze, the hill where he had stood at 20 years old and decided this land would be his future. "You built all this alone," Lydia said quietly. "Not alone," he replied, "but lonely." The word hung between them. That afternoon, Lydia felt something she had not felt in years. Belonging, not to the house, not to the arrangement, but to the man riding beside her. Clyde looked different in the open land, less guarded, more himself. That night, he came to her room without the stiffness of rules. When he spoke her name, it was not a command. It was a question. Days turned into weeks. The ranch moved with winter rhythm steady and sure. Lydia learned the house, the staff, the land. Clyde began asking her opinion, small things at first. Which book to order? Which charity to support? Then, larger ones. School funding in town. Church repairs. Without realizing it, he had begun treating her as a partner. At night, the distance between them disappeared completely. He was no longer restrained. Yet he was never cruel, never careless. In his arms, Lydia felt chosen, not used. One evening, during a heavy snowfall, they sat together by the fire. Lydia read aloud from a book of poetry she had found in his library. When she finished, she looked up to find him watching her with an expression she had never seen before. "What?" she asked. "You read like you mean every word," he said. "I do." "So did my first wife," he said quietly. The room stilled. "She wanted a life louder than this," he continued. "She said the ranch was a cage." "And you?" Lydia asked. "I thought love meant changing myself to keep someone from leaving." He looked at her then, really looked. "I won't do that again." "I wouldn't want you to," she said. That was the night something fragile and dangerous took root between them. Hope. The town noticed the change before either of them spoke it aloud. Clyde smiled more. Lydia stood taller. Whispers followed them at church. Pearl began setting 2 cups instead of 1, without being told. Then one morning the doctor came. Lydia sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded, heart pounding. Clyde stood by the window, silent but tense. "Well," the doctor said at last, smiling. "Congratulations, you're going to have a child." Lydia's breath left her in a rush. She pressed a hand to her mouth, tears blurring her vision. Clyde did not speak. He crossed the room in 3 strides and took her hands in his. His grip trembled. "My child," he said, voice rough. "Our child," she corrected gently. Something broke open in him then. He pulled her into his chest, holding her like he might never let go. That night, Clyde did not go to his own room. Weeks passed, and the pregnancy settled into reality. Clyde became watchful, protective. He insisted she rest. He argued with doctors. He canceled trips. But something else grew alongside the child: fear. One evening, Lydia found him alone in the study, staring at the fire. "You're afraid," she said. He did not deny it. "What if I fail you?" he asked. "What if this ends like before?" Lydia stepped closer. "Then we face it together," she said. "Not as an arrangement. Not as a bargain." "As what?" he asked. She looked him in the eye. "As a family." The word shook him. He kissed her then, slow and reverent, as if sealing something sacred. But not everyone welcomed change. A letter arrived from Denver. From the past Clyde had buried. He read it once, then again. His face hardened. Lydia watched him fold it carefully. "What is it?" she asked. "The past," he said, "trying to remind me who I was." That night, he held her closer than ever, as if bracing for something unseen. Lydia did not know it yet, but the hardest test of their bond was coming. And this time, love would not be a quiet arrangement. It would be a fight. The letter from Denver sat on Clyde's desk like a threat that refused to speak aloud. Lydia tried not to look at it, but she felt its weight in the room, pressing against the fragile peace they had built. Clyde had changed since reading it. Not cold, not distant, but guarded, as if an old wound had been torn open. 3 days passed before he finally told her the truth. "She's coming," he said one evening, standing by the window as dusk settled over the ranch. "Margaret, my former wife." Lydia's breath caught. "Why?" She wrote that she regrets leaving, that she made a mistake, that she wants to see what she gave up. "And what do you want?" Lydia asked quietly. Clyde turned to her. "I want my present, not my past." But doubt had already crept in. Lydia saw it in his eyes, the fear of history repeating itself. The fear that no matter how much land he owned, how much control he held, love could still slip through his fingers. Margaret arrived 2 days later in a cloud of perfume and fine fabric. She was beautiful in a polished way, dressed for city streets, not muddy paths. Her smile was sharp with confidence. "So this is Silver Creek," she said, looking around with interest. "You've done well, Clyde." "And this is my wife," Clyde said firmly, placing his hand at Lydia's back. Margaret's gaze slid to Lydia's stomach, just beginning to show. Something unreadable flickered across her face. "How quaint," she said. Dinner was tense. Margaret spoke of Denver, of parties and theaters, of men Clyde did not recognize. She laughed loudly, filling the room with noise, just as she always had. Lydia listened, calm and steady. Later that night, Clyde found Lydia in the nursery they had begun preparing. A small crib stood near the window, moonlight washing over it softly. "She hasn't changed," he said. "No," Lydia replied, "but you have." He looked at her, truly looked at her, and something settled inside him. The next morning, Clyde met Margaret on the porch. "You came looking for something," he said, "but it's not here." She scoffed. "You really think this ranch woman can give you what I couldn't?" "She already has," he answered. Margaret left that afternoon without another word. Winter melted into spring. Lydia's belly grew, and with it, the life they had promised each other. Clyde became gentler. more open. He no longer hid his care behind practicality. He spoke to Lydia about his fears, his hopes, his plans for their child. When labor came, it came hard and fast. Clyde paced the hallway like a caged animal, refusing to leave her side. When the baby's cry finally filled the room, he broke. "It's a boy," the doctor said. Clyde held his son with trembling hands, tears streaking his face without shame. "Our legacy," he whispered. Lydia watched him, heart full, knowing that the arrangement that had brought her here had grown into something stronger than either of them had dared imagine. Months later, as the sun set over Silver Creek Ranch, Clyde stood beside Lydia on the porch, their son asleep in her arms. "I once thought love was weakness," he said. "Now I know it's the only thing that lasts." Lydia smiled, leaning into him. What began as a bargain had become a family, and under the wide Montana sky, their future stretched as far and steady as the land itself.